Hey y'all, today is February 8th and I'm going to go over the basic skills assessment practice number 13 that goes with your quiz for tomorrow. So this is on solving one-step inequalities. So grab your paper and let's get started. Number 1, r plus 19 is less than 33. Just so I have a little bit more room to work, I'm going to rewrite that over here. So we have r plus 19 is less than 33. Now to solve this inequality, I need to get that r by itself, and I always draw a line through my inequality symbol just to remind me that there are two sides, and whatever I do on one side, I must do on the other. Now, to get that r by itself, because we're adding 19 to that, I want to undo that, so I'm going to subtract 19, and I do that on both sides. On the side with the r, the 19s cancel out, and r comes down, it's by itself. There was no reason to change my inequality sign, so it stays less than, and 33 minus 19, whether you do that in your head or with a calculator, you're going to get 14. So r is less than 14 is our solution, and now we just need to graph that. So at 14 on my number line, I'm going to put an open circle. So at 14, I put an open circle, and now because r is less than that, I want to shade the numbers that are smaller. So I'm shading towards 11, and I include my arrow. Now moving on to number 2, you will not have one like this on your quiz because this one actually ends up being a two-step inequality, but let's work it out anyways. So we have 14 minus x is less than 1. Well, I'm going to draw my line down my inequality symbol, and now I'm trying to get that x by itself. And x is connected to this 14, but what kind of 14 is that? Well, that's a positive 14, so I'm going to undo that by subtracting 14 on both sides. So now on the side with the x, my 14 cancels out, and I'm left with negative x, or negative 1x. You can even write that negative 1 attached to it. And that is less than 1 minus 14 is negative 13. Now, like I said, we had negative x or negative 1x. That means that that negative 1 is attached to x through multiplication, and I have to undo that because I need x to be by itself. So I'm going to undo that by dividing by negative 1 on both sides. It's just like solving a two-step equation, right? So I'm dividing by negative 1. When I divide by a negative number, what happens to my inequality sign? It flips. It's not going to be less than anymore. It's now going to be greater than. Okay, but now on the side with the x, my negative 1s cancel out. X comes down and it's by itself. On the other side, negative 13 divided by negative 1 is positive 13. So x is greater than 13 is my solution. And now I just have to graph it. So at 13, I need to put an open circle. And I'm going to shade all the numbers that are bigger than that. So all of these numbers here, all the way past 21. So I'm going to include that arrow. Okay, moving on to number 3. We have negative 17 is greater than x plus negative 8. So I'm just going to rewrite that over here. We have negative 17 is greater than x plus negative 8. So how do I get that x by itself? Well, to get that x by itself, I know it's attached to this negative 8. So how do I undo that negative 8? Well, I add 8. So I'm going to add 8 on both sides. Now on the side with the x, the 8's cancel out and x comes down, it's by itself. There's no reason for my sign to change, so it says greater than. And on the other side, I have negative 17 plus 8. Whether you do that in your head or you put it in your calculator, you're going to get negative 9. Now, negative 9 is greater than x is a perfectly fine solution. But I prefer to write it so x is over here and negative 9 is over here, and that lets me use my inequality symbol as an arrow. So notice, the pointy side is by my x. I need to keep the pointy side by my x, so I flip my sign. X is less than negative 9. The pointy side stays by the x, and the open side stays by the negative 9. So those are two equivalent answers. I'm not going to care which one you enter in on your quiz tomorrow. They will both be accepted. But now let's graph it. So I need an open circle at negative 9. So -9 is in between -10 and -8. So I'm going to place an open circle right there. And I shade all the numbers that are smaller than that. So I'm going to shade towards -16. And I'm going to include the arrow to show that it keeps on going. Now let's look at number 4. M plus 19 is greater than or equal to 22. I'm just going to rewrite that over here. M plus 19 is greater than or equal to 22. Well, to solve this inequality, I need to get that m by itself, and it's connected to a positive 19. How do I undo a positive 19? I subtract 19. So we subtract 19 on both sides. My 19s will cancel out. M is by itself. There was no reason for my sign to change, so it stays greater than or equal to. And on the other side, I have 22 minus 19, which is 3. So M is greater than or equal to 3 is my solution. Now we graph it. So at 3, I need to place a closed circle. So I'm going to fill in that circle, and I need to shade all the numbers that are bigger than that. So I'm shading towards 8, and I include my arrow because it keeps on going. Okay, now number 5, you will not have one like this on your quiz, and that's only because it does something a little funky here. We have n minus -12. But what happens when you subtract a negative? You end up adding, right? So I'm just going to rewrite this as n plus 12. N plus 12 is less than or equal to 25. So now I'm going to solve this. Well, to get that n by itself, I know it's connected to a positive 12. So how do I undo a positive 12? Well, I subtract 12. So I'm subtracting 12 on both sides. Now on the side with the n, my 12s cancel out and n is by itself. There was no reason for my sign to change, so it stays less than or equal to. And on the other side, 25 minus 12, whether you do it in your head or put it in a calculator, you're going to get 13. N is less than or equal to 13 is our solution. And now I just need to graph that. So at 13, I'm going to put a closed circle. And I know it's a closed circle because there's a line underneath my inequality sign. So 13 gets a closed circle. And I'm going to fill that circle in. And now n was less than or equal to 13. So I need to shade all the numbers that are smaller than 13. So I'm shading towards 8. And I'm going to include that arrow. Okay. Number 6, r plus 16 is greater than 25. I'm going to rewrite that. R plus 16 is greater than 25. Now to solve this inequality, I need to get that r by itself, and it's connected to a positive 16. So how do I undo plus 16? I subtract 16. So I'm subtracting 16 on both sides. Now on the side with the r, my 16s cancel out and r comes down, it's by itself. There was no reason for my sign to change, so it stays as greater than. And on the other side, I have 25 minus 16. 25 minus 16, whether you put it in your calculator or do that in your head, you're going to get 9, positive 9. So r is greater than 9 is our solution. Now that means at 9, I need an open circle. There's my open circle, and I shade the numbers that are bigger than that, so I'm shading towards 11. And I need to include my arrow to show that it keeps on going. Okay, number 7. M plus 19 is greater than 22. I'm just going to rewrite that over here. So to solve this inequality, I need to get that m by itself, and it's connected to a positive 19. So how do I undo a positive 19? I subtract 19. So I'm subtracting 19 on both sides. On the side with the m, my 19s cancel out, and m comes down, it's by itself. On the other side, I'm going to have 22 minus 19, which is 3. Now let's talk about our sign. There was no reason for it to change, so it's going to stay greater than. So m is greater than 3 is our solution. Okay, so now I just need to graph that. At 3, I'm going to put an open circle. And I'm going to shade all the numbers that are bigger than that. So I'm shading towards 11. And I'm going to include my arrow to show that it keeps on going. Okay, number 8, I've got negative 9 is greater than or equal to n plus negative 18. So I'm just going to rewrite that. We have negative 9 is greater than or equal to n plus negative 18. Was that right? Yes, negative 18. Now to solve this inequality, I'm trying to get this n right here by itself, and it's connected to this negative 18. So how do I undo that negative 18? Well, I add 18. So I'm going to add 18 to both sides of my inequality. Now on the side with the n, the 18s cancel out, and n is by itself, so it comes on down. There was no reason for my sign to change, so it's going to stay greater than or equal to. And on the other side, I have negative 9 plus 18, which is positive 9. So my answer is 9 is greater than or equal to n. Now that's a perfectly acceptable answer. Delta Math will take it. However, I would prefer to write it so I have n over here and 9 over here. So notice the pointy side of my inequality is towards the n. So I need to keep it that way. So I'm going to flip my sign, less than or equal to. So n is less than or equal to 9, or 9 is greater than or equal to n. Those are equivalent answers. I will take both of them on the quiz tomorrow. So now we just need to graph it. I'm going to put a closed circle at 9, and I know it needs to be a closed circle because there's a line underneath my inequality symbol. So a closed circle at 9, there's my circle. I'm going to fill it in. And now n was less than or equal to 9. So I need to shade all the numbers that are smaller than that. So I'm shading towards 3. And I include my arrow to show that it keeps on going. So that is the end of our first video. I'll make a second video for numbers 9 through 15. Stay tuned.